We're going to call this a hearing only anyway, so we're going to get started. Chairman Dozal will start off this meeting here. Before we get started, I want to let everybody know that March the 5th is our committee dinner at Pure Taqueria, and looking forward to seeing a lot of people there. March the 5th, it'll be an outside venue, sort of outside, but in their little patio area, and it's always a fun time. And looking forward to seeing you. We'll be passing out, dollar bills. We're banking committee, right? All kind of maybe some Franklins. Who knows? You never can tell. But anyway, really, why not? That type thing. But anyway, we're here to discuss Senate Bill 178, I believe. Senator Dozal, if you'll read us off and take it from there and give us the version we're talking about, we'll get you started.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I members of the committee, I bring before you Senate Bill 178. I'm working off of LC 560310. But I think it's important to also acknowledge that Senator Estevez is on his way, and he has a Senate Bill 228 that is probably at least 90% the same. It certainly is the same as in intent as my bill. There's a couple of different nuanced differences in execution, but those are minimal. And I think that either one of these bills will be get us into the conversation. I see that you have some online testimony as well from some experts. I know there's some experts in the room as well.
Chairman, would you explain to them what you and Senator Estevez did regarding the bills right quick?
Sure. Yeah. So what my bill does and what his bill does is the same. Is it endeavors to allow the state treasury to invest in Bitcoin. These are both, I believe they're both Bitcoin specific bills. I know that mine is, and there's really the key to that is on line 48. It just inserts Bitcoin as defined in the code section that we added into the allowed instruments that the state treasury can invest in. And then what section 2 of the bill does, it puts a lot of parameters, a lot of security parameters around the storage of the keys and the rules in which the investments can be made. One thing that my bill does on line 91 that I believe is different from Senator Estevez's is it does put a cap at 5% of the fund into the code. He has some cold storage elements in terms of the storage of keys in his bill that are not in mine that would probably be worth looking at and adding to mine at some point in the future. I know we're doing a hearing only today, but I think it's worth starting the conversation, Mr. Chairman. As you probably know, President Trump recently signed an executive order to essentially open up a Bitcoin strategic reserve at the national level. 20 states, I believe at least 20 states have introduced legislation to do the same thing. So it was 16 years ago that the white paper, the Nakamoto white paper was introduced and Bitcoin became a thing, and it has been quite the journey for Bitcoin since then. It has emerged as a very viable international instrument of storage of value that really is a hedge against debasement of fiat currency. And it is limited to 21 million coins, which is essentially, in my opinion, one of the primary reasons for its value. The coins are traded on the blockchain, and I think we're all at least somewhat tangentially familiar with what blockchain technology is. It allows for the tracking of the exchange of the coin, the transactions, and unlike our dollar, which I can't tell you what our dollar will be worth tomorrow, but I can tell you that in a year and 5 years and 10 years, our dollar will be worth less than it is today. And the reason for that is the unlimited supply of the dollar and the consistent quantitative easing measures by the federal government. Well, not even by the federal government, by the Federal Reserve, which is not the federal government, which is a whole different conversation. A lot of talk this year, Mr. Chairman, around unelected people doing things, and the Federal Reserve is one example of unelected people who have a lot of control over our lives and the devaluing of our currency, which we have seen in the form of inflation. So essentially, that gets to the core of this bill. I will tell you that I had a very good meeting with our state treasurer. Our deputy state treasurer is in the room today. And one of the things we're going to have to work through or have conversations around as it relates to this bill is the current rules with the state treasury allow them, as my understanding, to look at two primary things, and that is in terms of what they invest in. The first of which is the safety of the investment in terms of ensuring that there will be price appreciation, but the second of which is something that Bitcoin and gold do not have, which is it needs to generate a yield. And so the state treasury today does not invest in gold because gold does not generate a yield. So they're investing in bonds and similar instruments that do generate a yield. And that would be something currently within their internal rules that would prevent them from adhering with this law. So I think that part of the conversation will be around, is this the right place to insert Bitcoin into the portfolio of state investments? Do we want to look at something like ERS and TRS? Currently, as you know, we have an allowed percentage for alternate investments or alternative investments. I think it's probably a little bit of an open question as to whether crypto would be included in that. So that may be something that we want to have conversations, say, Senator, with the ERS and TRS system about as to whether or not Bitcoin in particular will be an alternative investment that they would want to look at, and whether or not we would need to change the code to allow that to happen. But, you know, there's a lot of speculation as to who exactly Satoshi Nakamoto was. Some people have outed themselves as he. Some people think it was Jack Dorsey. But an interesting thing happened here at the General Assembly, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Estevez has voted against every single one of my bills this year. But then just days after I introduced this piece of legislation, he introduced a very similar good piece of legislation that I was happy to co-sponsor. And I'm wondering if, in fact, he might be Nakamoto. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would turn the floor over to Senator Estevez for any comments that he may wish to add.
Yeah, that's right.
Glad to have you with us in this, Bess.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. The mystery lives on. And Chairman Dolezal is, I assume, is correct that I have not voted on any of his bills this year. But I will say that when it comes to Bitcoin, when it comes to ensuring that the state is at the forefront of innovation and ensuring that we abide by best practices in doing that, it gets bipartisan support. And I wanted to make sure that we had a bill on file that that showed that. And just yesterday, we signed on to each other's bills to show Georgia that this is a bipartisan issue and that we can all agree on making sure that our economic policy and our investments are looking towards a future, and Bitcoin is no longer experimental. It's here to stay. It's been here for a long time, and states and the world, and especially private institutions, have already moved on this, and it's time for Georgia to add on to that. So I'll leave it to that.
Chairman Dolezal or Chairman Esved, either one. You mentioned something. I'm just curious about the 20 states have introduced legislation. You said, like, is there legislation anywhere around that is doing this already? Any state?
I believe that this is, some of the gentlemen probably that are going to testify today would be able to give you an exact answer on that. I'm not sure that any states are actively making investments in their strategic reserve. I think that a lot of this is coming out of the White House's executive order, and there is a national push behind this, given that. So I would defer to some of the people that follow this on a state-by-state basis.
One more question before we open it up. And you also mentioned state treasurer. I'm assuming that'd be Mr. Steve McCoy.
It is.
And he's quite a knowledgeable individual. I mean,
he is. I met him for the first time, and he is straight out of Central Casting. I mean, he is.
I mean,
you wouldn't, if you saw him walking down the street, you wouldn't think that he was managing $67 billion of assets for the state. But when you talk to him, you figure out why he is the guy that is managing $67 billion.
And when you go over to his office, you'll really understand why.
I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but
you need to visit his office. His people, they really have it's amazing over there. They get it done. He's very efficient what he does. But he's telling you, or basically, I know we'll hear some more testimony, but he's telling you that right now that we don't have the infrastructure or however it's set up to be able to do that with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think the rules, it sounds like, and the deputies here, but the rules around their investing requirements, as I understand, require an asset that generates a yield. Obviously,
the guaranteed
Bitcoin
type asset type thing.
Yeah, I believe they're doing credit swaps or doing short-term investments.
Very similar to like a county commission investing their money. You got to have a guaranteed
Well, I think part of the way that we make money is by lending money to the
Right.
counties.
Right.
And so we'll do that on a basis that does generate a yield. And that's one of the ways that they can invest our state's assets.
And I want to apologize to both of you, senators, that our board seems to forget we have an 8 o'clock meeting. Obviously, Chairman Beach, if he brings Chick-fil-A, he gets everybody here. I did not bring Chick-fil-A, so, but I don't know where they are. Maybe they're eating Chick-fil-A somewhere. I don't know. But anyway, question for the committee. We'll get started. What number are you over there, boss? 12?
12.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Recognize you,
Chairman.
Senator Jones.
Senator, I heard you mention that Bitcoin doesn't generate any yield. Is that correct?
Correct. So there's not an internal interest mechanism. It is essentially an asset that you would invest in, very similar to gold, that has value essentially because of the scarcity. Senator Hodges and I had a conversation yesterday, and we're just kind of talking about what gives something value, and the only thing that
that's
gives
what I'm
something
curious
value
about.
is scarcity. And so the $21 million lock within the Bitcoin protocol, by the way, a little bit over 20 million coins have already been mined. And then the protocol will stop generating coins once it gets that $21 million coin number. And so when people like Larry Fink at BlackRock look at the Bitcoin environment and say that he can see a scenario where it rises to $700,000 US dollars in value per coin, which is what he said last month, it is largely due to that scarcity and the recognition that the international currency's debasement requires a hedge. Gold has traditionally been one of the hedges that has been used for that, but Bitcoin is quickly becoming an alternative hedge even to gold.
Is there an opportunity that hedge could be lifted in terms of the quantity of Bitcoins?
I don't believe so. I believe that's hard coded into the protocol. And that is something that is, you have a lot of other cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin is capped at the 21 million.
Thank you.
And unlike the other cryptocurrencies or many other ones, that cap is what makes Bitcoin the most valuable.
Senator Hodges.
Was it being able to bring to invest in and hold it?
Thank you, senators, for bringing this bill. I really believe that digital currency is the future. I mean, dollars, you don't know where they are. They are debased by inflation every year. The blockchain protocol and digital currencies will rule the day one day. But right now, I mean, this is a comment more than a question. I'll ask you if you agree, but right now there is such a speculative interest in Bitcoin that there's more risk in it right now. Because of the speculative nature of it, the value of Bitcoin goes up, the value of Bitcoin plummets sometimes. I think as we go forward and it is understood and used more in the world, I think it'll be more of a medium of exchange and less of a speculative item right now. It'll still be somewhat speculative. And I think, as we get there, I think it will be something that our state needs to invest in. I mean, right now, as I understand, and as Senator Dolezal said, the state, their own rules, the treasurer's rules, are that they cannot invest in something that does not bear interest, which means they can't even invest in gold. And gold certainly has intrinsic value, whereas Bitcoin, even with the $21 million limit, I mean, has no intrinsic value. And, you could say the dollar has no intrinsic value, but it does have full faith and credit of the United States government, however good that is, behind it. So I think we'll get there. I tend to agree that we're not there yet. And the other thing that I would say is that we don't always have to be leaders. I mean, in everything, we don't have to be, financially speaking, the old saw about the leaders are the guys who get the arrows, the pioneers are the guys that get the arrows in the back. That's great. And we need risk takers in our society, but state governments invested hard-earned money of our taxpayers. We don't want those errors in our back. We don't. And I think we can I think we'll get there. I just don't think we're there right now.
All right, Mr. Vice Chairman over there. As you can tell, my vice chairman is a honest to God banker. He understands banking. Anybody else got, what number are you there? 5. All right.
And there's, as Senator Hodges said, sometimes here you can take arrows in the back of this building. Chairman, you mentioned there's a couple of differences between the two bills when you mentioned cold storage. Could y'all, I know you got people wanting to testify, but could you briefly, between the two of you, kind of hit some of those main differences between there? I think cold storage was one of the ones you
want to
mentioned.
highlight cold storage, Senator?
Yeah, just really briefly, cold storage ensures that that the asset is stored in a manner where it cannot be hacked, it cannot be taken. And in many ways, how you would store gold, store dollars in a safe, cold storage would be something similar, but in the digital term.
Is that the two main differences or is there? between
That's
the
one
two?
difference. We have general language
Okay.
around security that's not specific to cold storage. I think
Okay.
cold storage could be inserted into this either without explicitly adding it, or we could add it. And then the 5% cap, I believe that your bill, Senator, allows the department to essentially determine the asset.
Yes,
The amount of-
it allows the board to do it. And really, we would likely, both bills would get to the same spot.
Yeah.
Because best practices, cold storage is one of those best practices, especially if you're trying to be very risk adverse.
Okay.
So we probably get to the same places.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's, we had questions here. Let's, open up the hearing here for our ones that want to testify. We've got some people on Zoom and we've got a couple other folks here. Chairman Dozal, do you want to, State Auditor, do you want him to go first or how would you like to do it?
I think what I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, is that we hear from the people that signed up to speak, and that will
Sure.
probably broaden our questions
I
for
know you
the
brought
deputy.
somebody here from State Auditor's office, just making sure. So, hey, yes, sir. All right, let's see here. Let's talk about Stephen DeLorean. Does that get that right? Would you go to Mike, tell us who you are right quick, like, and kind of keep it as short and simple as possible? Thank you.
Morning. Hey, I'm Stephen DeLorme. I am a product designer. I actually live one neighborhood over in the Old Fourth Ward. Been born in Atlanta, so I've been here for most of my life. I think this is an important issue for me. I mean, a little bit of quick background. I was a graphic designer. I was in graphic design school in college, 2008, the big collapse happened. That's kind of been most of my adult life, is just kind of, I don't know, watching, folks struggle with the existing financial system. When I don't know, it's been interesting kind of growing up in this environment, and kind of struggling to kind of, build your savings and build your wealth when our currency is being constantly deflated. And, once I discovered Bitcoin in 2016, I just kind of, I had to learn more and more. And I've spent, the past 9 years, like, studying it incredibly deeply. And I'd be happy to answer any of the, technical questions anybody might have about it. But what I really just kind of want to impress upon everybody here is that, this is a bipartisan issue. I think this is the federal government is going to continue inflating away our money supply. And from what I see, it kind of doesn't really matter the administration. That just kind of tends to happen with our government. And I think there is a community that we have here in Atlanta, that we have basically an office, actually the next neighborhood over, called ATL BitLab. And there are people who come to meet and discuss and talk about Bitcoin every single week. And it's a very, very important issue to Georgia voters. So I would just kind of, to tie this off real quickly, I would say that when it comes to the government, having the opportunity, the state government having the opportunity to invest in Bitcoin, Georgia voters are already doing that, right? Georgia voters, are already investing in Bitcoin as a means to safeguard their financial future. So look, I'm not going to get up here and argue for increased taxation or anything like that. I, personally would, love to pay less in taxes. Having said that, I do pay taxes. I'm a voter and a taxpayer. And it would be kind of nice if my taxpayer dollars were not being held in something that is going to be deflated and debased over time. So I'll end it there with just saying that we have a pretty welcoming and opening community here in Atlanta for Bitcoin. So if you would like to educate yourselves more deeply about this topic, we'd love to talk to you.
Mr. Lord, question for you right there.
Yeah.
Since you're an expert in Bitcoin, you've been studying it since 2009,
16.
15. What is a Bitcoin in layman's term? I mean, is it an algorithm? Is it, I mean, you can't.
Well, I define Bitcoin as three things, actually. Bitcoin is a money, it's a protocol, and it's a network, right? So if you have a computer protocol, a protocol is just like a language that computers can talk, right? Using this protocol, you have something called the Bitcoin network. It's just different computers that all speak Bitcoin. I run a computer that speaks Bitcoin. I've got friends in Atlanta that run computers that speak Bitcoin. I've got friends the other side of the world who run computers that speak the Bitcoin protocol. All these computers speaking together form a digital ledger. This ledger is where people trade Bitcoin, the money. So Bitcoin is three things. It's a protocol, it's a network, and it's a money.
I
And
thought I actually knew what it was. Now you've really confused me.
sorry about that, my bad.
It's all right.
I say that sometimes at meetups and my friends always tell me like, oh, that's a really good way of explaining it, Stephen. So I was just like, yeah, maybe if I explain it that way, but yeah.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you. That's very much. Damon Russell, please. Oh, you guys must have come together.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Here together. Thank you guys for allowing us to speak. I'm very excited. I'm incredibly impressed with what these senators have put forward. And
Can you tell us who you are, what you
oh
do?
yes, my name is Damon Russell. I'm actually a TV producer. But I, like Stephen, have been studying Bitcoin for many years and I'm very excited about it. And I just want to say, I think Georgia, and you may or may not know this, but Georgia is already a leader in the Bitcoin mining space. So according to Greenpeace, in the year 2021, about 31% of the US Bitcoin production was from Georgia. And that's due largely in part to the very low energy cost in this state. So I believe the passage of this bill would solidify that position, but also attract a lot of investment and innovation and job creation here to the state. And like I think has been said earlier, there is precedent for this. The largest asset manager in the world, BlackRock, and the third largest, Fidelity, are both very heavily invested in Bitcoin through their respective ETFs. And the IBIT ETF, the BlackRock, the Bitcoin ETF as a whole has been the best performing ETF of all times in its first year. So of the 4,000 available ETFs, the Bitcoin ETFs are the most successful. And so to just push back a little bit on that, respectfully, that we don't need to be leaders, I would argue against that. There is a very finite supply. There is less than 2 million Bitcoin available to buy. Many other states are currently discussing this, including the federal government and many other countries around the world and sovereign wealth funds, et cetera, are also looking into this. So moving first actually is advantageous because there is a very finite supply available to get. And so I would love to see Georgia at the forefront of this technological innovation that's currently happening. And I know there's always going to be people who are cautious about investing in Apple stock in the early stages, but look what happened with that. And I think something very similar is going on currently with Bitcoin. So I encourage everyone to vote for this bill or both of these bills, however it works. I think they're very impressive. Thank you for your time.
Question, one
Yes, sir.
question while you're there. You hear about people getting hacked on Bitcoin and losing their monies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That these computers that speak Bitcoin, however you want to talk about it, they can find Bitcoins out there, just whatever Bitcoin truly is, not whatever. So my question is, you have to have the keys or those type things in your quote wallet to be able to maintain. So the investment company has a key, you have a key, and I guess there's a spare key. Is that how that works?
That is one way, a very good way. That's called multi-sig, where, for example, just a very simple explanation, you'd have a Bitcoin wallet with funds secured in it, and you'd have 3 keys. It would take 2 of those 3 keys for anyone to access it. So for example, you might, a company might hold one key and, I personally hold one key, my wife holds one key, for example. So, I mean, most of the hacks you hear about with Bitcoin are user error. People who just don't know how to secure it, don't truly understand the asset, or someone calls them pretending to be from Coinbase and they give away their key. It's almost mathematically impossible to hack into a wallet. Perhaps in the future, quantum computing, I don't know. I'm not an expert in that, but currently it's, I mean, pretty much impossible to hack into a secured Bitcoin wallet. Your chances of guessing someone's 12 or 24 word key is 1 in quadrillion. I don't even know. I mean, a massive
Okay.
amount. It's very, very, it's impossible, essentially.
Thank you. Questions, or we'll go to the next?
Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. What number are you?
I think she's got a question.
Okay.
Nine, did you say? 10?
Is there another speaker on Bitcoin?
There's a lot more. Talk.
There's a lot more. Okay, I'll wait till the end.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Rich Lancaster. Or did I get that right? Is he zoomed?
Hi,
Yeah,
yes, you're close. You're close. It's Rich Lassiter. Hi guys. Thanks for having us up here. I am a lifelong Georgian. Grew up here in Atlanta. I'm an emergency room doctor now, and I did my training in Augusta. So even did my medical schooling in Augusta, in Atlanta. In Georgia, I should say. I want to firstly applaud Georgia and the Senate members that have put forth these two bills. I think it's outstanding. We can be in the forefront here, and I heard some apprehension, I think, from the vice chairman about maybe we shouldn't be in the forefront. But I would echo what the other speakers have said, that getting in early is the answer here, really. But I wanted to say a couple other things. I am an independent voter, and I'm not affiliated with any party. I think Bitcoin is a bipartisan issue, and so I'm even more encouraged that we have the two different parties more or less coming together with nearly identical bills. And I don't know how the political system works, but I presume you can have one cohesive bill out of the two of them by the time we're all done with this. One thing, excuse me?
It's very simple, the political system. I'm just on that.
Yeah, oh yeah,
question.
very simple. It's just like medicine. So the one thing that I would say that is different maybe with Bitcoin is the decentralized nature of this technology. So there's not any one ruler, there's not anyone that is setting the laws of the system. There's people all over the planet that are running this code, the software that Mr. DeLorme just mentioned a few minutes ago. And so there's not an authority figure that you can go to and say, hey, is this allowed? Is this not allowed? You just have to abide by the rules of the network. And so there's not anyone that can give you permission and say, oh, yep, you're allowed to use this now. Anyone can do this. And this is a thing that the whole planet needs to get away from the fiat currencies that are losing value on every country in the planet. So what we're seeing with the volatile price is people figuring this out. And it takes a while because this is so different. This technology is so different from everything that we have all grown up with. And so it takes a while for people to, be skeptical and then learn and then really understand it. And it takes years. And I've been looking at this for years as well. And I'm sure that everyone who's here zooming in or showing in person to speak would be happy to talk to you for an entire day about this, because there's a lot to it. And we all try to sum it up as best as we can. But that's what I want to say about the decentralized nature. And it's so different from what I do in medicine, where I had to jump through all these hoops, right? I had to go to medical school and I had to pass this test and that test and get certified. And even like right now, I've got to recertify with the federal government to be able to prescribe certain medicines, right? So all these gatekeeping things that exist in the world that we all know, they're not there with Bitcoin. These are the rules, follow them or don't follow them. If you don't follow them, you don't get to participate. So that's kind of the one thing I want to say. And one other thing I want to say about Georgia in particular, we actually have in this state the second most hash power. I don't want to get too far into the mining, but what that means is that of all the states in the nation, we have the second most computing power working on the Bitcoin network in this state. The number one is Texas, and then we're number two. And that's pretty outstanding. And so This is a business. It's a free market business. Anyone can join whenever they want. If you want to start mining, all you need is some capital to buy the machines, and you need to buy the power, and you plug them in and you start going. And it's a very competitive business. But there's no one that giving permission to stop or to not stop, to start, I should say, or not start. And then the very final thing I think I want to say is that the vice chairman mentioned that this asset is volatile, but he understands that digital currency is the future. And he wanted to wait until it's worth more. He didn't say those words, but he said he wants to wait until it's more stable. Well, more stable is a much higher price. What is a higher price? I don't know, 1 million, 10 million? I don't know. It's going up forever because the whole world needs this, and they're all going to figure this out eventually. So the more we can learn about it today, and I don't mean today, February 27th. I mean today, now in 2025 and early 2025, the more we can learn about this now, the better we have for the future generations. So that's it. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Doctor, I appreciate your testimony. Thank you very much. And it's nice to know the medical doctors also understand other things too. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Can we go to Gabe Lord?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Good morning.
All right. My name is Gabe Lord. I am not Satoshi Nakamoto. So let's not get too technical on things. And if I were, I probably wouldn't say so anyway. So I'm an Army veteran, longtime Georgia resident. The Army actually sent me here in 2008, and I loved it so much I decided to make it home. I am a small business owner in Southwest Georgia. I have also I'm the CEO of a nonprofit that delivers Bitcoin education to military veterans. And we are already doing this in partnership with Technical College System of Georgia at the Georgia Vector Center in Warner Robins. And this education is being sought after by military veterans throughout the state of Georgia. We also have an online program that we deliver to veterans across the country and some in international locations. And the demand for this knowledge is there. And it's just like Rich said, particularly in Georgia, people are already buying Bitcoin. The voters here are investing in it. They are building their wealth in it. They are using it as a reliable store of value as it is now. And it's as Rich said, this is a permissionless money. Anybody with an internet connection that knows how to use a computer can go and they can obtain Bitcoin for themselves. And it's happening here in Georgia. It's happening around the world. Georgia is second in the nation, only behind Texas, as far as the computing process that generates the Bitcoin called mining. And companies like CleanSpark are setting up more and more mining facilities throughout the state, which is having a positive impact on workforce, which is a benefit that we are seeing other states realize that continue to grow their mining capabilities. So a couple of points about the risk that we may tend to ascribe with a commodity like this. Bitcoin is the most secure computer decentralized network that we have ever seen. It's not, and I know that we may tend to think, okay, this thing just started in 2008, 2009, but really Bitcoin is the culmination of 40 years worth of work that started when I was a child. And these are different computer geniuses coming together, working on projects, trying out different types of digital currencies, and then finally coming to the solution, which is Bitcoin, which became active in 2009 and has gone up. I think it's 108,000 or 108 million% since then. And when we look at it as a store of value, while we're not talking about something that is interest bearing, the value of the commodity itself goes up year over year over year. Right now, compared to 1 year ago, it's up 51%. So you're going to have a hard time finding any other stores of value that have that type of track record. And when it comes to the volatility, something that's interesting about it is it's as though the volatility is a feature and not a bug in the system. Okay, it's designed to be that way to allow investors to get involved in it when the price dips and then it goes up. But when you take a look at the chart of the performance of the commodity itself and you zoom out, it's just like Rich said, it's going up forever. and it's not going to stop doing that. And when you have wealth management funds in organizations like BlackRock and Fidelity, and some of the best performing businesses on the planet, like MicroStrategy, Tesla, and a handful of others that are heavily investing in Bitcoin to amazing results, then it's something that I feel every state needs to take a very, very close look at. And while we are still early now, we won't always be early. Over 20 million of these Bitcoin have been mined, and when it's done, it's done, and that cannot be changed. It's written into the source code that there will be 21 million Bitcoin, and that is all. And once it's there, it's there. And ultimately, we'll move into a realm where you can't just go out and buy it because it's going to be owned by entities, by nations, by individuals. Then at that point, your only option is going to be how do you transact in it, and then how do you earn it? And on a state level, that's not something that we're going to want to do. It's always best to get a hold of the raw commodity, and that is what it is. A couple of points about it that I just want to point out. One thing that sets Bitcoin apart from any other form of digital currency, including the decentralization, including the scarcity of it, is there have been so many attempts to hack into this network, and it happens basically on a daily basis, and it has never, ever been hacked into. The actual Bitcoin blockchain, the node network that is around the planet, has never been cracked. And mathematically, the numbers are so astronomically impossible that we have every reason to conclude that it never will. And they're trying. The only situations where we hear about people being hacked and people being rug pulled and people's coins being stolen is going to be an issue of user error. And that's what it's going to come down to. People not practicing proper security protocols, not setting up their cold storage properly, leaving it on what we call exchanges, which is where you buy it from, which have back doors into them. But when we take the proposed route in this bill and execute proper cold storage methods, then the Bitcoin is safe. That's just how it is set up. So one more thing. While there can be a benefit to watching and seeing how things go and continuing to assess the risk, I do want to say that there are currently, the latest report is there are currently 27 other states in the nation that have active bills that are reviewing adding Bitcoin to their strategic Bitcoin reserve, or creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or investing in it in some way, shape, or form. It's already happening, okay? And one of the results that we're seeing that I just want to revisit is industries are being drawn to these states that recognize Bitcoin, because it's more than just creating our own reserve of Bitcoin here in the state of Georgia. It also sends a very clear message to Bitcoiners across the country, to voters, to people that want to move to forward-thinking states that embrace emerging technologies, to industries that want to move to states that embrace emerging technologies. And so the impact that this has on industries and on the workforce is a residual impact that we can anticipate to see. Because I do believe that adopting this and moving forward with a bill of this nature, it's not a question of if, it's just a matter of when, because it's going to become undeniable that the benefits that the state can receive from this, and the voters in turn, and the economic strength and independence that Georgia can have, and the decrease in reliance upon federal systems, it's going to send a very clear message to the voters that you do have our best interests in mind, and that you are willing to take the necessary steps to ensure our financial security in the future. And I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Lord. Any question from the committee? Thank you for your testimony on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last one is Doug, is it Lionheart? Is that right? Or Leonhardt?
Doug Leonhardt. Hey, nice to speak to you all today. I'm sitting here in the global headquarters of Intercontinental Exchange. We are a Georgia company. We own the New York Stock Exchange. I'm sure you're all familiar with Jeff Sprecher and Kelly Loeffler, who are part of the leadership, or Kelly is no longer. She's now in the government. But I work for Jeff's company. We're a Fortune 500 company. We operate exchanges and clearinghouses all around the world. We're very large financial infrastructure based here in Georgia. I'm speaking to you not on behalf of the company, but of course on behalf of myself as an individual who got interested in Bitcoin when I first started hearing about it. I've got a background in math. I'm a finance guy. Got a very smart team of people who build mathematical models and write code and things like that are what we do here. Our company, ICE, Intercontinental Exchange, launched a startup known as Bakkt, or this kind of happened around 2017 or so. That's when I got interested, and when Bakkt was being built out, there was kind of a buzz around the office about Bitcoin, and a number of us said, you know what, Bitcoin was trading around $2,000 to $3,000 at the time, and a few of us said, you know what, I've got a little bit extra money. I'm going to buy one. I'm going to put it in cold storage and just set it aside. Who knows? Maybe it goes to zero. Maybe someday it pays off my mortgage. We'll find out. I'll take the risk. And I did that, and I've still got that first Bitcoin. And since then, I've studied it and learned more about it, and become more convinced that it's the future and it's very powerful and important. And I've moved more of my net worth into Bitcoin, and I've also been an advocate for understanding Bitcoin, both here in the community with some of these other gentlemen that have already spoken, as well as, professionally. And I think the guys that spoke before me have covered a lot of the key points beyond that. So I'll keep it brief, but happy to answer any questions.
Any question from the committee? Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Thank you. I wished I had the guys that just talks knowledge about Bitcoin. Senator Dozal, Senator Estevez, I think the posture we're in now is you guys have really opened the door and you put it on the table, and we've got some issues that we got to overcome. And I don't know if we want to hear from our state auditor here office about, is there a possibility and what we have to do to change to be able to invest in Bitcoin? I don't know if you want to speak to that right quick, if you don't mind.
If I may.
Take the mic, please, if you don't mind. Cody.
A little shorter.
Morning.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll say just very briefly to your question about the appropriateness for Treasury. As has been mentioned, we are very conservative in Treasury, and what we invest in is very specific.
Tell us who you are.
Oh, I am Scott Austinson. I'm the Deputy Treasurer and Chief Investment Officer for the Office of the State Treasury.
Right.
If I say OST, that's who I'm referring to. We do invest about $77 billion for the state. $68 billion of that is our state funds. I will say very briefly that all of those state funds are controlled by both the statute that is referred to here, and it's in Title 50, as well as the State Depository Board, which promulgates our investment policy. And Bethany, if you want to hand it out real quick, we'll leave this with you, Mr. Chairman. We have copies of our investment policy. And I would just point out from the investment policy, looking at it, we don't have to study it now, you will notice that Bitcoin as what we would refer to as an alternative investment, just saying it briefly, would not be appropriate currently for our investment policies, in that, as you have heard, what we are looking for is first and foremost stability of the investment, which means we are not allowed to lose money. So losing money would be defined as if we invested in Bitcoin at, say, looking back over the last 6 months, at a high of 110,000, and then today it's 88,000. That would be defined as a loss of principal. That would be a problem. Secondly, we are looking at liquidity, and liquidity refers to the ability for our funds, and we're talking state funds that we manage in the Treasury, not other areas of the state where there may be longer term investments where an alternative investment would be appropriate. But for the state, we have to look at liquidity so that when the funds are needed, we have to liquidate and provide the funds to the investor. And then thirdly, we have to look at the marketable rate of return. So this is what was mentioned earlier. We do have to have some rate of return. Bitcoin does not pay interest, as you know. In theory, it could have capital appreciation. But when one is talking about capital appreciation from a total return perspective, that's more in the alternative arena. That would not be appropriate for our investment policies, because we're looking for, again, stability of the funds, liquidity and availability. And then thirdly, we're looking for a marketable rate of return, and having the possibility for capital gains would would not be allowable currently on our investment policy. I would suggest changing Title 50. Probably, if I may speak frankly, I doubt that Bitcoin, because of the volatility of the nature of the investment, which has a lot of upside potential from a capital gains appreciation perspective, it would not be appropriate for state treasury funds because we are extremely conservative and we're, our WAM is about 90 days. So I would say shortly or briefly, changing Title 50 to give the treasurer the ability to invest, if approved by the State Depository Board, it could be allowable, but it would, as a practical matter, would probably not be done just because of the disconnect between the investment policy statement, the investment policy requirements of the treasury funds and what we do. I think what was mentioned earlier was probably the pension funds. They do have their own investment policies. Investment funds do typically, in fact, I know TRS and ERS, they do have alternative investments and they have much longer investment horizons. And so that opportunity for capital appreciation might be more appropriate there. And I don't want to put any thoughts in anyone's mind, but Mr. Chairman, specific to your question, at this point, as an alternative investment that does not provide a return, that does have a lot of volatility and probably would not meet the requirement of maintaining the preservation of capital, and then thirdly, not actually earning any interest, would probably not be something that the Treasury would be investing in, assuming the board would even allow it to be an allowable investment. So you asked originally about the law. The law could make Bitcoin one of those allowable investments, but whether the board would authorize it to be utilized in the investment policy, which we've handed out, is, I would say it would be a long shot, but that is not a comment about Bitcoin, Mr. Chairman and members. It's simply a comment about how the Treasury invests state funds per Title 50 and less about Bitcoin as an alternative investment for portfolios where that type of long-term capital appreciation might be appropriate.
Question from the committee? Recognize.
I don't know if this question is, you'd be the best person to answer or either of you, but I have a,
Put your mic a little closer, Senator, please.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so in Senate Bill 178, it's on line 98, says the board may permit the state treasurer to loan digital assets so as long as such loan does not increase the financial risk to the state. And as we've heard from speakers, like Bitcoin can be volatile. I understand that in this bill, you said like only 5% would be, what does it say?
Line 91.
He has a cap of 5%.
Yeah,
yes.
but cap at 5%. So to address your concerns, is there like a medium or like a percentage that would please the Treasury that would allow for such an investment? Because it seems like that the volatility of it is the major concern here, especially since we want to make sure we don't risk the financial risk.
What was your question, Senator, to make sure?
I guess my question is like, if the cap is at 5%, is there, where did you come up with that cap?
It's an arbitrary number, and it's essentially a number to, we started all our alternative investments with ERS and TRS at 5%. As I recall, the first bills I ever voted on were 5%. We increased those to 10%, at least on one of them this year. So I was following that path. There's nothing magic about that number. I think that what the deputy treasurer is getting to is essentially, we could pass this bill today and they would largely shelve it because the rules require them to generate a yield. It may be worth opening that door so that they then are the ones that have the ability to make that decision. I think that what Senator Estevez and I, what we talked about yesterday, will also do is in the off session this year, have conversations with ERS and TRS and look at the alternative investment rules, similar to what the deputy was just saying, and make sure that Bitcoin is inclusive. And if it's not, we can go ahead and add it there. And that would allow the state to dip its toe in the water as well. But as to the 5%, Senator Estevez, I think, was going to defer that to the board in his bill. But I think under both of these, what we know is that it will be we're going to have a diversified portfolio.
Sure.
And so that's just a recognition of that.
May I ask one more question?
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Is there a model of this type of legislation in other states?
There are a number of think tanks that have models out there. This bill came from one of those think tanks that has developed model legislation. Senator, I'm not sure if yours did as well. I presume that it probably did.
Yeah, my bill was one of the models that's been used, and as the speakers have said, it's been introduced in various other states in similar forms. And to your first question, Senator, 28 states, by the way, the list that I have right now.
Oh, nice. Okay.
The intention behind the bill that I dropped was to leave it open, and I very much understand that we should not be dictating what the Treasury does, but just ensuring that the Treasury has as many tools in its toolbox as it can, and then leaving it up to the experts was the intention.
Thank you.
Okay, here's posture we're in now. If you don't mind, Director Scott, perhaps it would be best if you, I'm just throwing this out on the table.
Yes, sir.
Maybe your board could come back to us possibly in the next session and give us a take of how we would go about changing if that's something the board would be willing to look at for digital currency. I don't know that. You said your board would have to make that decision. Obviously, that's not us. And as Senator Dozal said, even if we pass the legislation today, the law doesn't allow us to do what we need to do at this point in time. So anyway, just throw that on the table for you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we could do that. And just for members who are not familiar with the State Depository Board, there are 7 members of the State Depository Board. It is chaired by the governor, the state CFO, the state accounting officer, 3 commissioners, Department of Revenue, Banking and Finance, and Transportation. And then finally, the state treasurer. Those are all statutory
Yes, sir.
names. And we can certainly do that. The State Depository Board has responsibility both for the treasury investments and also for those what the board refers to as excluded investments. So the investment funds that are outside of treasury, which would be TRS and ERS, they actually have policies that are also reviewed by the State Depository Board. And so it may be that I will pass that on to Treasurer McCoy, of course.
Yes, sir.
He is the administrative officer of the board, so it
Yes,
could
sir.
be probably a discussion item, or perhaps he'll come forward. We'll come up with some ideas about how you'd like to move that forward to get
Thank you.
feedback from the State Depository Board.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, it's certainly been an interesting testimony. It's an interesting morning there. You should have questions there. Manuel, what are you over 3, 4? Are you 5?
Or, thank you, gentlemen, for bringing this, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was at a little primer on Bitcoins yesterday, and I have some people have been trying to get me to invest for some time now. Is there like
Should
a,
listen to him.
I know. I know. Is there a primer though of, that you guys have some type of electronic, 1, 2, 3 Bitcoin 101 to educate some of the legislators that are sitting around here so they can,
They're sitting right there.
they're sitting right there.
Those 2 guys probably have
We can find something.
a grasp on it.
Because I think education is really the issue at this point, I think, because it's not understood.
Right.
It's just new. So I welcome education personally. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here this morning. Listen, I appreciate the testimonies. Thank you to Zoom folks that talked to us this morning. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you, everybody. This is a hearing only, and if anybody has got anything else to say, we're going to close this hearing. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.